We're live. Gareth, welcome to the show.
How's things, mate? All right?
It's very good, thanks. Very, very, very good. I thought we could maybe start if you could just tell us a little bit about your background. Obviously, you've written the book, which we can talk about, but like getting up to that point, yeah, can you tell us about your background?
Yes, mate. I started playing rugby really young, turned professional at quite a young age. Played for like Leeds and whatnot, and then I left just before my 20th birthday due to like contract disputes and whatnot. Ended up joining the Marines. Did 6 years in the Marines. Left did like various elements of private security in Somalia and Afghanistan. Went to uni, did forensic psychology and other aspects of psychology. Currently doing a PhD in gauging atmospherics, and how it can be applied to like corporate settings. And then, I suppose concurrently with the university, mate, I started writing a book where I took a diary when I was in training between 20 and 21 years old. So I wrote that up, and it's added some psychology into it, and it's gone on to be a bestseller. So yeah, that's kind of where we are, really. Just a mixed match of things, really, mate, which has kind of led me here.
I read, well, I listened to the audiobook a few years ago now. It must have been when it just come out, and it's I love it. I actually remember, I think I must have just started my Hyrox training actually when I done it. So I remember listening to that on some of the runs, and yeah, it's proper inspirational book.
Yeah, brilliant.
It's called the 0.1% or becoming the 0.1%. Can you just tell us why that is?
Yeah, so becoming the 0.1%. So obviously, I wrote the diary from leaving my house to getting to the end of training, and that were more or less a year's worth of content. And at the time, the Marine slogan was 99.9% need not apply, and that were an actual statistic to depict your chances of success, 1 in 1,000 chance back in early 2000s of being successful on that endeavor. So I just wanted to kind of get a title that encapsulated that journey from becoming something, and then I just kind of flipped this formidable slogan on its head, and came up with becoming the 0.1%. And the publishers were happy with it, and it stuck. And it's been great, mate.
The book like describes how crazy tough it is to go through that selection. But is there a specific reason that you think like 0.1% or 99% need not apply? Why is it so low, do you think?
I think it's changed a lot more in recent years with respect, but I think it was certainly at the time that the statistic was that you've got a 1 in 1,000 chance of getting your Green Beret from the first initial contact with the careers office. So that's whether you're picking the phone up or whether you are walking in. At that point, you've got a 1 in 1,000 chance of doing it, of getting to the end. And it's the attrition, it's so low, mate, because it's mentally so tough. There's a lot of demand on you in terms of the aptitude test and all the testing that you have to do, which is the academic stuff at the start, because you need to be good at map reading, so you've got to be good at maths. But it's just the physical tests, mate. The physical tests are really, really tough. And I suppose the accumulation of that during the joining process is going down to Livingston back then to do what they call a PRMC, Potential Royal Marines course. And that were like a 3-day selection. And it were just absolutely brutal. I mean, you got down there, you were kind of offered some kind of respite on the first night, but the following day, it would just like you're in a different place, so hostile. And there were just so many people that just dropped out during that 3 days. And then training itself, mate, you can go in, you can be incredibly fit. It is all mental. It is completely all mental. And I think your propensity and how much you prepare mentally is 95% of it. There's some lads that get stress fractures because of the constant pounding on the lower limbs and stuff. But apart from that, it's all mental, mate. But it's a tough test.
What initially drew you to like want to be in the Marines?
Yeah, so sorry, mate. I'd always kind of been in like I'd always wanted to be in elite environments. I'd always like been in really like tough environments that really demanded of you the very best in terms of the manifestation of kind of behaviour and stuff. And I've always had this kind of thing
where
about
do you
me,
think
mate.
that comes from?
I don't know. It's weird. So my dad was the strength and conditioning coach at Cast Tigers Rugby League when I was born. So from a really young age, like 3 or 4 years old, I've been in high end rugby league dressing rooms and always been exposed to that kind of raw environment and that really direct dialogue and wanting the best and everybody coming in together and seeing where you can kind of what the human body is capable of doing, both individually and collectively. So I've loved that. Yeah. And I've always just been like, I just want to be the best. I want to see exactly what I'm capable of doing, both mentally and physically. And I've just always had that way about me. So I've always kind of sniffed out all these environments where I can go and that can be manifested. I can get the answers that I'm looking for. So I explored the rugby, didn't work out for various other things of which are documented in the book. But then the Marines, mate, I stumbled across it one night, sat with a friend, life completely lost after rugby. I had about 12 months of turmoil. And it's on Sky News, the Marines were looking for Saddam's sons at the time on really kind of elite operations. And I just said to me, mate, that's exactly what I want to do. And he was like, are you crazy? And I said, no, that's where I would love to be, in that environment, like at the very top end of it and doing all these amazing operations and stuff. So that's what drew me to it, mate. And I just thought that the Marines would be the vehicle to those kind of operations and really seeing what I were about. I went in to see what I were about. I didn't think I could do it, but I just thought any time in that environment would make me a better person.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, there's some crazy tough stuff that you did, like that's documented in the book, but one of which is, and I think you said it's one of the worst things, is the wet dry routine.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, mate. So it's funny because I talk about this on talks, mate, and whatnot, and people always say, "What's the worst part? What's the worst part?" And it's all really bad, but wet and dry, like, it's just one of them things that it breaks anybody, regardless of where your mental endurance or resilience is at. And basically what it is when we go into the field, like on exercise, on operations and whatnot, you have 2 sets of clothes. You have your clothes that you've got on, and then you have a second set of clothes called your dry kit. And your dry kit has to remain dry at all costs, because ultimately that's what gives you the longevity of being out in the field at all different conditions. So you're out through the day, you get wet. They've got us wet every single night on training. And then during the night, before you get in your sleeping bag, you have to take your wet clothes off and put your dry clothes on before you get in your sleeping bag. And what that does is that maintains the integrity of your sleeping bag, so it keeps you warm. If you're getting in wet clothes, your sleeping bag gets wet, and eventually that compromises you, and you'll go down with hypothermia or trench foot or any kind of thing like that, just through lack of poor discipline. But the problem comes, the mental conflict comes when you get out of your sleeping bag to do century, or to get up in the morning at, say, like a 500 Ravelli, and you have to get out your dry clothes and put your wet clothes on. And in December, sometimes they're frozen. You've got to smash them off trees. You've got to. It's a soul destroying experience. And if it's winter, sometimes you're in them wet clothes all day, freezing cold all day, and that's what breaks people. I think that I spoke to Chris Oliver, the guy off who's currently on SAS, who dares wins Channel 4, and we were talking about this because he's done some stuff. I've interviewed him for book 2, and it's having the conviction to just put up with that every second. And ultimately some people just can't do that, and that's the hardest part.
What is it that like you said, some people can't do that, and obviously lots of people drop out through the process? What is it that you think like separated those who made it and those who didn't? Is there anything that stood out to you?
It's a great question, mate. And we did like a bit of a thematic analysis on the diary entries to ascertain what predicted success in the early kind of 15 weeks. And I named this lesson in the book called the controller and the dismisser. Now, the controller lived a life of discipline in the early stages. They subscribed to the culture and what the Royal Marines demanded straight away. And that was that they would queue up patiently to wash all the kits and to hand wash the kit in 1 of 3 dryers, 60 lads. And that process kept you up all night. But if you accepted that, it kind of made life easier. Whereas the dismissers, they thought they could go to bed straight away and get up early in the morning and start doing the kit then. But what happened was the majority of the lads, the controllers that had subscribed to this kind of methodology of Royal Marines culture, of doing it properly the hard way, they were like, what are you doing? Why are you turning the light on? You're not doing that now. And over time, mate, and it wasn't, they probably got a few quick wins out of it, the dismissers, but over time, they started falling behind. And it were really, really subtle. You probably couldn't see it, but they started missing like key tactical weapons, learning phases, and they just started gradually falling behind to a point like where they were filled with anxiety. Sorry, mate. They were filled with anxiety, and they just weren't picking up the key stuff, and they were falling behind. So discipline, it was self-discipline, I think, were the saboteur. People tried to cut corners or thought they were being smart and didn't subscribe to being a team player. They weren't successful.
And it's, I guess what you're saying is like discipline in all aspects. Like I think you said in the book, like how you do anything is how you do everything. You know, like that.
It's attention to detail.
Yeah,
it's exactly that. It was just attention to detail in everything. It's like I always say, it's like what you do when the lights are not on.
Yeah.
Alluding to like what you do behind closed doors when you go home after the gym, what you eating, how you living your life. Do you know what I mean? It's that. You're either it's the 1% behaviours. If you subscribe to the 1% behaviours in training, you were ultimately successful barring injury.
I've also heard you say that a lot of the guys that were dropping out are the more like stereotypically masculine type guys that you might think of as Marines, and those who made it are less so. Can you talk about that some more? And has that sort of like changed your perspective of day-to-day life and how you treat people and so on?
It has, mate. And it's funny, and I'll come on to this, mate, but I saw an element of it at Hyrox in Birmingham recently.
Right.
That kind of thing. So obviously, like I think growing up, especially as a male, you kind of, we're in this social kind of constructive society of these social norms, what we expect and what we value and stuff. Resilience, we value resilience. We value really like kind of masculine kind of males, and by this I mean people that are big in stature, muscly, covered in tattoos, that look physically imposing. And at the start of training and in selection, there's people that are littered with these. You're littered, surrounded by these kind of people. And I think being uninitiated to that, you naturally think that these people are tough men and that they will go all the way, and they fit at the time your stereotypical depiction of masculinity of the Royal Marine. So you latch onto them people naturally, and you kind of you want to be with them. You want to, because you think that they're going to provide a vehicle to get you to where you want to get to. But at the very, very start, they give us a knife, a fork, and a spoon called a KFS, and you have to give it to somebody that you think is going to fail. And they were like all the overweight kind of geeky lads that didn't look physically imposing, had all the KFS, and the bigger lads, the masculine, all the lads that depicted this kind of notion of masculinity had nothing. And it were really weird, mate. After like 2 or 3, 4 weeks, these guys that had nothing all left because they couldn't handle it. And the guys that had all the knife, forks, and spoons, all the geeky looking kind of unphysically imposing people, were there at the end. The most mentally tough guys I've ever met in my life. So it broke my understanding really of my. It changed everything. It changed everything. I no longer went out and you look at somebody and you think, God, I won't mess about with him or whatever. As a young lad, that just were destroyed. And at Hyrox, there were guys walking around that were really physically imposing and moody as well, and throwing it about. And then when we were on the track, we were lapping them, and it were a very, very similar kind of experience. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Like we've alluded to, like it was very tough, and you talked about like you like the elite environment and wanting to be elite, but what was your motivation? What kept you going through the whole selection process? Was there anything like you leaned on? Any particular motivation that kept you going?
yeah. So I the rugby thing were like almost a disaster, and although it were my I left through my own accord. I decided to walk away from the game because I'd just become really saturated with it. And Leeds had offered me really poor money over 4 years, and I felt like I were worth more than that, so I left. But I always viewed it as a failure, a massive failure. And it were really catastrophic, mate. And I just thought that unless I sort my life out, I'm going to end up in jail because I were constantly going out fighting, I were drinking, I like taking recreational drugs, and it were chaos. I'd like gone from this real disciplined and structured environment to nothing, and as a result, I were just all over the place. So I wanted to get into the Marines, but it was a massive risk, right? Because obviously, 1 in 1,000 chance of doing it. If I failed at that, I just thought I am a catastrophic failure in life. So I was at that point thinking, who am I? Am I this guy? Am I capable, or am I a failure? Am I living in this illusion of who I am, who I think I am as a person? So when I went in, there were so many people as a consequence of my behaviour just prior thinking, oh, you'll be back in a month. You won't do this. You're going to end up being a Navy chef and just saying all this stuff. And believe it or not, mate, it made me so angry that that's what they thought of my character, that I was never, ever going to let them, ever going to allow that kind of validation, that external validation. So even when I lost motivation, which you do on all kind of hard goal and long goal acquisitions, I always came back to them. And I just thought, well, what's the alternative? I can't go back and massage their validation, give them that final say so they can laugh at me. So I just felt I had no option but to stay in and complete the job. And that's what I did, mate. And it's funny because I've been writing book 2 and looking at failure, and now through inverted thinking, when you look back and you're able to, you should use failure rather than loading value onto the end goal. That's all right doing that, and thinking of yourself, what you're going to get at the end of the goal, what you're going to get. But when you lose motivation, you lose that vision. Whereas what I've been researching is that when you look back at what it's going to be like if you fail at that endeavour and what you're going to kind of take on, that's more powerful in terms of your anchor of stability and keeping you in goal acquisition than loading value onto the end goal. And that's exactly what I stumbled across in training. It was such a powerful and stable anchor of stability, not wanting to validate external opinion. And that's basically, mate, when motivation went and I wanted to go home and I were hating life, I thought of that. That's where I landed, and that kept me in.
I've been reading a lot on like sports psychology lately, and it's kind of similar. Like you have that motivation, that value that drives you on, but in like when things are getting really tough, I was reading like how you can actually use hatred to try and spur you on that little bit more, and it's kind of similar. Yeah. It's like, you know, like it sounds a little bit negative, but you know, if you can find something.
It sounds very negative and very counterintuitive, but when you lose motivation and when you're under fatigue and the facade, this exterior facade falls off and we become vulnerable, and we all do under fatigue, right? The negative self-talk starts. And if you can get that negative self-talk to become anger you get angry at it.
Mm.
And you've got some kind of passion in there that you're angry about. Like, I'm not going to let them like have the last say. If you can get to that point, that will kind of drive you on like a second energy source.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what I found, mate. Like without a shadow of a doubt, that's what kept me going. I think unless you've not got some passion in the depths of despair, you're gonna quit.
Yeah.
There's got to be something that drives you at the bottom.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably not a state to live in, but when you really need to tap into it, it's valuable.
Yeah. It can pull you out. Yeah.
Yeah. Alcohol seemed to be quite a big part of the culture, which I've always found interesting. I've read a couple of SAS books, and I've always thought of like you sort of guys as elite and everything like that, and then you go and get pissed.
Yeah.
Is it? Do you feel like it's an important part of the culture? Is it a negative? Do you think about that at all?
Yeah, you know what, mate? It's one of them things, mate, that like is very taboo. And like you've just said, you were like you find it hard to believe. Back in the early 2000s, you were kind of coming out of the 90s.
Yeah.
Still coming out of the 90s kind of, and the 80s kind of thing. Mate, I cannot tell you how big the drinking culture were. It were like, if one person were drinking and he was senior, everybody were drinking. It were a bit like gang culture. That's the only way to describe it. And it were like, if you had a really like big 10, 15 mile booted run the following day, somebody would call a troop piss up and you'd have to go out night before, really get on it, because it made the run harder the next day. It was just really kind of like demented mentality that were completely, in terms of performance, counterintuitive. And like lads had come in off the night out, 5 o'clock in the morning. Some lads would even turn up at 7 in the going out stuff and have to do it in like going out shoes and shirt and jeans. It was unreal. But it was heavy, detrimental and quite catastrophic drinking. There's like the stories are like lads, SAS, SBS lads in Afghan, and before they're going out and doing jobs, they've been heavily on the piss the night before. They've got booze from wherever, and it's. I think a lot of it's changed now, but back then it was massive, absolutely massive.
Do you think there's any misconceptions about the military that you see?
Well, yeah, I do. I think that, and this is what book 2 is about, really. I think that there's a massive misconception about I suppose the elite mindset, and everybody thinks that when you've got such a mindset, you're completely resilient to everything, and that you are in some way unemotional, and you are not fazed by, I suppose, day-to-day life or minor adversity. How could you be when you're dealing with such raw and taboo stuff when you're on operations potentially? But it's completely not true. It's completely not true. You're exactly the same. You're going into these environments, onto these operations, and you're still experiencing the same thing. The difference is that you understand the limitations of weapons. You understand, in a sense, bullet penetration and what it does. You know the job, so you haven't got the anxiety about it. It's a bit like if somebody said to me, "Boiler's just broke. Can you come and fix the boiler?" I'd have massive anxiety because I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm scared of getting exposed and what that's going to mean. And it's the same thing. Once you know the job and you're on the opposite side of it, you get comfortable with it, and it kind of all starts making sense. And I think sometimes when you come out into Civvy Street and you go for jobs, people just think you're this kind of mindless killer, and you haven't got, I suppose, the emotional competency. But you absolutely have. If anything, you learn how to manage your emotions at the top and the lower end to the nth degree. And some of the most compassionate people that you'll ever meet in the full array of emotions. And that's a massive, I think, huge detrimental misconception that we kind of need to tap into and break, really.
Is there an element of you have the emotions, you have fear maybe and stuff, but you go and do it anyway, whereas
it's that you're like, there's certain things that you don't think you're going to be able to do, and all of a sudden over a period of time you arrive at these things, like 12-mile load carry at I don't know, I want to say week 12 or week 15 the training. It's, I don't know, £100 worth of kit, whatever. At the start of training, you put your Bergen on with a quarter of that weight, and it digs into your shoulders so much that it cuts the blood off in your arms. Your arms go numb, and you feel like it's an impossible thing. But through conditioning, they add more weight. You walk further, and you end up arriving at 12-mile load carry, and you just do it. And going through consistently that process of redefining expectation and, in a sense, destroying the boundaries, you end up at a place where you're just like, well, I've done that. It's almost like you completely trust the process, and all the kind of mental blocks and barriers that you put in yourself in terms of physicality, you just know that you can do it. You just know that you can do it. And it's exactly the same with fear, really. You just know that it's all right. You've done this, so and you can do that, and you just get on and do it.
Yeah.
But you do feel it, like anybody else. Sometimes you're like thinking, fucking hell, I could literally do without this. Especially like if you've been out on the piss the night before, like we used to do. We'd go out and then we'd have to fast rope out of helicopters, and we're just like, I feel horrendous. But you just do it. Peer pressure's massive. The peer pressure's massive.
Yeah. So you've discovered Hyrox?
Yes, mate. Yes.
How did that come about?
So it kind of got put on my radar a few months ago, or whenever it kind of started coming into like mass hysteria, and I thought I really, really like that. I really fancy that. And one of the athletes for 0.1, Sean, has become really successful at it. She's a pro woman now. She's second on podium at Hyrox.
Birmingham.
Birmingham, yeah. So we've been talking to her and stuff, and she's telling me about it. And I thought, if I'm honest, mate, I've done CrossFit and stuff, and I don't profess to be fully compliment at all. Terrible at gymnastics. And I've always kind of thought, don't really enjoy CrossFit comps. However, I'll have a go at Hyrox, because everything I've done since the Marines, I've always been kind of underwhelmed about, or just not really known why we're doing it. But Hyrox, mate, I absolutely loved it. I loved it. I was running around and I just thought, this is me. I absolutely love this. And I left feeling like really, really high. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to really kind of dedicate now to this, while I've still got some performance in me, and just see where we can end up. So that's what I'm going to do. But yeah, I loved it, mate.
Good. What was the worst part?
I don't know. Sledge, I was quite worried. The sledge, when I was seeing people push the sledge, I thought, that looks heavy.
Yeah.
But when I got to it, I felt all right. To be honest, I thought everything was really all right. I was fine. I did feel sick at 2 points. After lunges, I felt a bit sick. And on wall balls, I felt a bit sick doing wall balls. But apart from that, I just loved it. I was in the moment. I felt really, really good physically. And yeah, I think the sledge and the sledge pull is probably a bit of a sticking point. But if you can get past that, you're all right.
Yeah. I often ask people on here where their mind goes and what they think about when a race like Hyrox gets really tough in the depth of a race. And I guess you've got a lot of previous experience to lean upon. Is there anything in particular that you think about?
Yeah, so I was very, very conscious of like going into like negative self-talk and kind of getting in a bit of a hole at some point. So I thought I was just mentally prepared for that. And I think when you mentally prepare for that, you're halfway on your way to mitigating it, to being in a better place. You can start nipping it in the bud quick and like going into like negative kind of positive self-talk. I don't think at any point I went deep into it, as deep as what I thought I were going to do. But I just had, before I went in and while I were waiting to kind of set off, I just thought, it's just like endurance course at Marines. I'll just see it like that, where it's like an hour give or take, are just all out. And I just kept saying, we've been here before. We've been here before. And that's what I kept saying to myself, we've been here before. And then I just kind of set off and just sat into it and just kind of went, yeah.
Did you see a lot of military being attracted to it?
Mate, I can. I think it lends itself so well to military.
Yeah.
It's military fitness at a kind of an eye level through and through. I absolutely love it, mate. I think like just the bodyweight stuff, the fitness, the bodyweight stuff and whatnot. I think it's just this perfect, like eclectic mix of they've nailed it. Yeah.
Military and rugby league players I can see being attracted to it. So you're like you're the perfect combo.
Yeah, and I just feel that like I don't know if it's due to like what I've done in the past, but I just feel that like I just kind of slot into it perfectly. I just feel like I'm just kind of at CrossFit. I don't feel like I'm at one with it. I feel like I'm battling against it, and I've kind of got no kind of time really to kind of really get into gymnastics and kind of nail that down. But with this, I just feel like I'm kind of there's some synergy there with it, and I like that.
Yeah. I've spoken with sports psychologists on here before about several elements of the race, but she talked about chunking and how Hyrox leads itself very well to sort of, because you've got a kilometre to do and then you've got something else to do, and if you just focus on the activity that you have to do at the time rather than like the hour and a half, 2 hour race that you've got ahead of you, it can be very beneficial for your mindset during the race because you've just got to concentrate on the next step. And I thought it was interesting. You've got a chapter on compartmentalization, which I thought was quite similar. A similar thought process. Can you talk about that some more if you can remember in the book?
Yeah, mate, I absolutely can. So, and that's a great point, because I absolutely did the chunking. I break everything down, mate, to manageable chunks. I wanted to focus on the run first, just sitting into that on the sledge. And it wasn't until I got into the sledge that I started having my eye on the run again. So I was always conscious of the next step, but I never look too far. And I never do that because I think that breaks you mentally. Yeah. It can switch you off, even the most mentally tough people. But yeah, in the book, I compartmentalization, like breaking large undertakings down, it can be applied to anything, i.e. Hyrox. And when I got into training, I just thought, if I look at this now, and this is my life for a year, close to a year, 10 to 12 months, I'm not going to do it. You're going to go home. So I just thought, I'm just going to break it down. I'm going to break 34 weeks down into week chunks. And I just thought, I'm not going to worry about anything that I've got to do because it's too overwhelming. I'm just going to focus on every day, and the week is as far as I'm going to look. And at the end of every week, I'm on a Sunday, I'm going to tick it off. That's been successful. And then we reload onto it next week. And before I knew it, mate, I was like at week 8, week 9, week 10. And then you're getting into tactical phase of training. Then you're in commando phase of training. And you've got your eye on it. You can see the end. So I've used that for everything, mate, compartmentalization. And I absolutely used it for Hyrox. I did. I just thought, the bigger picture doesn't matter. Yeah. I'm in the moment now, and all I've got to do is the run is where I'm engaged at. And then it's the sledge. And then, row, sledge, and everything else. So yeah, massive fan of that.
Yeah. Are there any drills or anything that you did or that you would recommend for people listening to this? They're not going to go through selection, but they want to build their resilience, their toughness that could maybe help them in something like Hyrox or day-to-day life. Is there anything like that you can suggest doing?
Yeah, I mean, I always expose myself to kind of to tough things, and I kind of I think high intensity, Hyrox, CrossFit based workouts, WODs, whatever you want to call them. I think they're brilliant, mate, for developing mental toughness and extending the base of resilience, your mental resilience. Build your confidence. You'll encounter negative self-talk throughout that. And through the practiced path of going through that, you learn that you can come out the other end of it, and you start being able to counter negative self-talk, and you extend the base. And I think how I live my daily life is disciplined. But I think there's so many exposures, things that you can expose yourself to that will make you more mentally tough. Mental toughness is conditioning to environment. And I think a lack of hard things and a propensity to reside in comfort naturally will make your mind weaker. Your resilience to these hard things, your negative self-talk the lid will come off it and it'll become overwhelming. And what I do is I look at the week and I actively pick one or two really, really hard sessions that I know that I don't want to do. And I don't want to do that. And a couple of days leading up to it, I think it's on my mind. I'm thinking about it. The day of, I'm like thinking, oh God, I could really do without this. Shall I cancel it? Shall I do? No, I go. And while I'm walking there, I'm thinking, what am I fucking doing? But it's all about, it's doing what you don't want to do sometimes. Yeah. And I think certainly by exposing yourself to these things that go against everything, regardless of what you've done in the past and your experience and your level of fitness and whatnot, but you've just got to keep exposing yourself to these tough things, because what I found is that resonates throughout life then, and it makes life easier. It just does.
Yeah.
So the benefit of 30 to 45 minutes a day resonates through life, and it has massive positive implications.
Birmingham for me wasn't quite as good as I wanted it to be, like my race time. But yesterday I did a session that I was like intimidated by beforehand. I was like, I do not want to do this. And afterwards I was like, that's exactly what I didn't do enough of before Birmingham. Like I didn't have that feeling enough of like, I really don't want to do this session.
That's it.
They were hard, but not like shitting yourself beforehand.
And
I think there's a lot of value for those.
What time did you get out of interest?
In Birmingham, I did 1:12. So
pro as well?
No. In the men's open, nice, which is a couple of minutes slower than I did in London.
Right,
like in April. So yeah, it's all right, not too bad, but
good.
Yeah. So tell us what are you doing now? You mentioned you're writing a book. You've got your 0.1. Can you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, so it must have been about 3 years ago now, after I'd finished becoming. I think it was Tokyo Olympics, mate, and Simone Biles were competing at gymnastics, and she pulled off. Said she had anxiety about twisters and whatnot, and Piers Morgan jumped straight on it and just said she's mentally weak. She knows she's not going to win, and that's why she's quit. And I'm like, I can't believe that you can sit there in a chair of comfort and say that. And loads of people kind of jumped on the bandwagon, and we wrote an article about it. And I thought, if that's what a large majority of people think that have never been there in the arena kind of thing, I need to write about it. So I were in the back of a taxi, mate, and I got this guy's diary, and I just wrote in what I thought were like 6 to 7 prominent elements of a growth mindset cycle that you kind of go through when you're on goal acquisition or career acquisition. And now you can end up in exhaustion, blah, 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 and what happens when you remove the stimulus. So I started developing this model. It's not all inclusive by any means, but it's just a representation of that mindset's not fixed once you've got it. It's elusive based on conditioning or whatever experience. And it got a publishing deal. So I've been writing that solid for the past 8 months. So that's coming out the 0.1 Academy, Master 7 mindset cycles to maintain peak or the elite edge of performance. And then, 0.1, mate, is we're looking at like CrossFit Hyrox clothing. We've got some really good manufacturing coming out next year, working with a bit of a major sportswear manufacturer designer now. So that's been unbelievable, mate. And so it's all kind of kicking off, really, mate. Mindset coaching. I've just kind of started exploring that as well. So yeah, book 2's out next year. That's going to get published in America as well this time, in the US in October. So it's just really exciting. I think that's going to be. I feel it's a book, mate, that's not been explored. I think that military lads, like the Channel 4 lads, no disrespect whatsoever, they paint this picture of mindset that is so stoic and resilient. I think it's unattainable and it's an illusion. And I want to kind of portray an accurate understanding of mindset, that you need to work on it. And you don't always feel good. And there's times when you have to apply resilience, but you don't always feel resilient. And just open the lid on that and just explore that. So that's what I've been working on. But it's been really complex. It's been tough.
Brilliant. And that your first book, I've been listening to it again recently, but because it's a diary and because it's like your words at a time, it is very raw and real and honest. And it's not just like trying to give this perception of like this stoic mindset or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It shows like the roller coaster of emotions that you're going through and how tough it was and how you hated it and all those things.
And I thought like I couldn't do it. I thought that I wasn't capable. I was incompetent. I thought I was a failure. But you just get up and you just keep going. And there were elements in the diary when we were like going through third and fourth line edits of it, and we've kept it the same. But there were things where I was just like, God, I could cringe at this now. And I hate the fact that that's how I felt and that's what I said and that's what I was thinking. But it's real.
Yeah,
it's real, and I just thought that it's important to get that in, because there's so, as human beings, we're so hell bent on keeping this facade of to make ourselves look immaculate and brilliant, and we don't struggle with that. That's not a problem, and we paint this picture thanks to social media, and I'm guilty of it, of this perfect life and this whatever else, but it's not real.
I often finish this podcast with like a question about what message you put out to the world on a billboard, but I thought we might twist it a little bit today. Like your book has essentially like 34 lessons that you took away from the process. Are there one or two that stand out to you that you think might be applicable, bearing in mind the listeners to this podcast, that you think is worth sharing?
I think attention to detail, the controller and the dismisser.
Mm-hmm.
It's two fictional characters that depict somewhat inaccurately a cross-section of a group of people. It's pigeonholing a group of people into two different boxes. However, those that lived a life of intrinsic discipline. So you can be disciplined in the gym, but if you're not disciplined at home, you can forget it. If you subscribe to it and the 1% behaviours, and you just trust the process in that, and you become comfortable with the mundane, knowing that with delayed gratification, instant gratification, you're wanting quick results. You want to go on a diet on day one, day two, you want to have lost a couple of pounds, and then you throw toweling when it doesn't happen. Delayed gratification, obviously, is you're investing. You don't know when it's going to pay off. If you can subscribe to that, and you can put in the attention to detail and subscribe to the 1% behaviours, you will be massively successful in anything you want to do. It's as simple as that. It is as simple as that, but its simplicity is what is the killer. It's so simple, but it's also so boring. And because there's no immediate return on that investment, we fall off it. I think athletes and Hyrox, people that are in Hyrox, in anything, to a consistent and committed degree, They get that.
Yeah.
You do get that, but you there's no shortcuts. You can't cut shortcuts and expect good results, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah. All right, brilliant. Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else we should have talked about? And and B, like, where should we send people to if they want to find out more about you?
Yeah, no problem. Absolutely great, mate. Yeah, if you want to catch me, www.0.1.co.uk is the website. There's all random things going off on there, and will be next year. Gareth Timmins author on Instagram. Gareth Timmins books on Facebook, and yeah, I'm on there. Catch me.
All right. And have you got any more Hyrox booked?
I'm looking at Manchester. I'm trying to get onto Manchester Singles Open if I can,
Okay.
but then I'm trying to get a partner for Glasgow.
Right.
I'm looking at that. So yeah, we'll see.
Trying to get a partner, so people should apply to be a partner, should they?
Please, come on. Yeah.
All right, brilliant. Thank you, mate. Appreciate this.
Cheers, mate.
All right, take care.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, mate.
All right, cheers. See ya.